from the heart. So if I'm moving away from the heart, this is an artery. If I'm getting back to the heart, this would be what vessel?
A vein.
Vein. Those are the two types. Those are the two types of vessels, major two types. In between, I will have another type of vessels that will allow me to exchange with the tissue cells. So if I have tissue cells on here, what allows me to perform the exchange between the blood and the tissue cells will be a third type of blood vessels. Those are called my capillaries. Alright, so again, three major vessels that we're going to discuss in this chapter. Those are my arteries, veins, and capillaries. Generally speaking, most of the arteries are conducting oxygenated blood. Most of the veins will be conducting deoxygenated blood. Can you give me an exception for an artery that is not carrying oxygenated blood? Pulmonary arteries, pulmonary trunk and pulmonary arteries. As you remember, you're getting the pulmonary arteries from what chamber? Right ventricle. To be conducted to what organs? My lungs. So I'm carrying deoxygenated blood from my right ventricle to my lungs to become oxygenated and then will return back. Can you give me an exception for the general rules that veins are carrying deoxygenated blood? Can you give me an example? Pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins, as you remember, I'm a vein. I'm conducting the blood back to the heart, but this time I'm conducting oxygenated blood rather than deoxygenated blood. All right. So today we are discussing the different types of arteries. As we're going to see here, the first type of arteries that we are looking at would be my elastic arteries. Another name for the elastic arteries would be my conducting vessels. The elastic arteries will keep branching, giving rise to the vascular arteries or distributing vessels. Then I will have the small arteries that will get into the tissues. Those are called my arterioles. Those arterioles will divide into the tiniest type of blood vessels that we do have. Those are the capillaries. Those are my exchange vessels. This is where I will be performing the exchange between the blood and the tissue cells. Then I will start to drain this blood out of my tissues through my venules. This is a small vein. First vein that will pass through, this is called a post-capillary venule. Multiple venules will fuse together to form small veins, and then small veins will drain into large veins back to the heart. Those veins are called my capacitance vessels, as we're going to see today what I mean by capacitance vessels. Alright, so what can you see here as a difference between an artery and a vein? What are the major differences that you can see between those two diagrams?
The elastic lamina.
I have elastic lamina in which vessel? Artery or a vein?
Artery.
Artery. So you see here, I have more than one elastic lamina in my artery compared to I don't have any elastic lamina in my veins. What else? What's another difference between an artery and a vein in terms of structure?
The valves.
Valves. So veins will have valves. Veins will have valves. What else? Tunica media is thicker in my artery compared to the thinner tunica media. This tunica media, this is where I keep my smooth muscles. So in my arteries, I have much more smooth muscles compared to the veins. Tunica media in the artery is much thicker than the tunica media of the veins. What else? Which one will have a larger lumen?
The valve or the veins.
Veins. So you see here, the veins will have larger lumens compared to my arteries. So looking at the vessels, whether it's an artery or a vein, the vessels will have three layers. From inside out, you have tunica intima, tunica media, and then tunica externa. So again, here you have tunica intima inside, then you have tunica media, and then you have tunica externa. Tunica intima to the inside, it will be formed by endothelium. This is my epithelial lining of the blood vessel. And below the epithelium, you will have a thin layer of connective tissue. This is called my subendothelial layer. And then I have my elastic lamina, internal elastic lamina in the artery, which I don't have in here in my veins. Alright, so can you remind me what kind of epithelium do you have in your vessels? Was there an artery or a vein? Do you need squamous cells? Yes, simple squamous epithelium. Remember, my vessels will have to be aligned with one row of flat cells to provide me with the minimal amount of resistance. So which one would provide you more resistance? Having flat cells like those ones in example 1, or having, let's say, columnar cells or cuboidal cells in example 2? Which one will apply less resistance to the flow? But of course one will apply the least amount of resistance. That's why you will be lining your blood vessels with one layer of flat cells, simple squamous epithelium. This is the type of epithelium that will be forming my endothelium. Alright? Below the epithelium, you usually have what kind of connective tissue? Do you remember what kind of connective tissue is usually located below your epithelium? Any kind of epithelium? Do you remember? Is the epithelium vascular or avascular? Do I have blood vessels in my epithelium? Yes or no? No, you don't. So remember, I usually need a type of connective tissue that has a lot of spaces in between its connective tissue fibers to allow the passage of fluid carrying oxygen and nutrients up to my epithelium. What kind of connective tissue would provide me with this? My areolar connective tissue. So you see here, the subendothelium here, the subendothelial layer is formed by areolar connective tissue. So you have endothelium, below it you have subendothelium, and subendothelium usually would be formed by areolar connective tissue. Moving to the next layer, it's located in between. This is my tunica media. What's meant by media? Media means in the middle. In the middle. So tunica media will be formed of muscles that will allow the dilation or the constriction of your blood vessels, whether those blood vessels will increase in diameter or will decrease in diameter, constriction or dilation. Alright, so what kind of muscles do you have in your blood vessels? Smooth muscles. So can you remind me what are the 3 types of muscle tissues that we do have? Smooth, cardiac, and skeletal muscles, right? So which one would I have in my vessels? Those are my smooth muscles. Do you have any voluntary control on your smooth muscle cells? Yes or no? So can you decide, I want to dilate my blood vessels now? No. So it's under involuntary control. Smooth muscles are under involuntary control. Moving on to the outer layers, this is my tunica externa, and it's mainly formed of collagen fibers. I'm mainly formed of connective tissue fibers. Let's go to the different types of arteries. So first type of arteries, those are my elastic arteries. Elastic arteries are like the aorta and its major branches. Give you an example here to check the idea behind the function of my elastic arteries. So, did you measure your blood pressure before? So, what is my blood pressure? What is the normal range of my blood pressure? 120 over 80, right? This is my systolic blood pressure. This is my systolic. We're going to be discussing the blood pressure later on today in much more details. And what is this 80? This is my diastolic arterial pressure. So what I mean by diastolic blood pressure and what I mean by systolic blood pressure. So what is blood pressure first? So simple.
The pressure on the wall.
Pressure of the blood, exactly.
Yeah.
Pressure applied by the blood on the wall of the vessel. This is my blood pressure. So if you're looking at a blood vessel here, the flow inside is pushing the wall of the vessel. And as you push the wall, you apply pressure. This is called my blood pressure. So what is meant by blood pressure being systolic? What is systole? Do you remember from last chapter?
Contraction.
Ventricular contraction. So this is the pressure of the blood in my artery during ventricular contraction. And what is diastolic? Diastolic means during ventricular relaxation. So again, what is systolic blood pressure? This is the pressure of the blood where in my arteries, when either during ventricular contraction, it will be called systolic, or during ventricular relaxation, it's diastolic. So during ventricular contraction, so this is my left ventricle, this is my aorta here. I'm pumping the blood, I'm contracting, pumping the blood out of my chamber into my aorta. So I can understand that you have a blood pressure during ventricular contraction of 120 millimeter mercury. But if you are relaxing your ventricle, dilating your ventricle, are you pumping the blood?
No.
No, I'm not pumping the blood. So how come the flow of my blood during ventricular relaxation is applying a pressure to the wall of the blood vessel of 80 millimeter mercury if you're not pushing blood? So if I'm telling you that I don't have blood flow, and then I told you that this blood flow that I don't have is applying a pressure of 80 millimeter mercury. Where did you get this 80 millimeter mercury from?
Is it because the blood is still moving through the veins whenever there's not a contraction?
So where do you get the force by which you are pushing the blood? Is from the ventricle. The ventricle now is relaxing. It's not pumping blood out. So how I will be able to get a pressure if I'm not pushing the blood?
Dilation of the vessel?
Because it's filling with blood. See.
It's filled with blood, but do you have flow if you're not pushing? So if I'm pushing this table will move, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not, will it move?
No.
No. All right. So if you're not pushing the blood, how come the flow will apply a pressure of 80 millimeter mercury during ventricular relaxation?
The valves.
Valves will stop. So rather than getting the blood back,
Rather
to the chamber, it will stop its back flow. So the pressure should be zero.
Yeah.
Because the vessel expanded, and then when it goes back, it pushes more blood, but not as hard.
Exactly. So what happens in here? My elastic arteries during ventricular contraction. So when you contract your ventricles, you're not pushing the blood with a pressure of 120 millimeter mercury. You're pushing the blood by a pressure of 300 millimeter mercury. And this pressure will expand your elastic vessels. Will expand my aorta. So what's going to happen when you increase a volume to the pressure? Always remember the relationship between volume and pressure. When you increase volume, what happens to the pressure inside? Decreases. And when you decrease the pressure will drop from 300 to 120 millimeter mercury. And then what's going to happen after that? When you start to relax, like any elastic thing, what's going to happen when you stretch it? It will recoil. So the arteries, aorta and its major branch will start to recoil, and as you reduce the volume of the blood vessels, what's going to happen to the pressure inside? It will increase. So rather than having a pressure of 0 during ventricular relaxation, I will get a pressure of 80 millimeter mercury because of the recoil of the aorta and its major branches. Right? It's like acting as a pressure reservoir. What I mean by pressure reservoir, I did store some of the pressure during ventricular contraction, and I would use it later on during ventricular relaxation. I'm not consuming all the pressure during ventricular contraction. I will keep some of this pressure for later on during ventricular relaxation. Alright? This is what I mean on here, that the aorta and its major branches, elastic arteries, will expand, recoil as blood is ejected from the heart to keep a pulsatile blood flow, to keep the blood moving, whether during ventricular contraction or during ventricular relaxation. Your blood is moving all the time. Alright, so moving on to another type of arteries. This is my distributing arteries, vascular arteries. From its name, what's the major characteristic here for those blood vessels? I'm called vascular. So what do you think I have? I have muscles. I have a thick tunica media. I have a thicker layer of smooth muscles. And why do you keep smooth muscles in your arteries? Why do I keep smooth muscles? Do you push the blood by contracting the smooth muscles of the vessels? Yes or no? You're not pushing the blood. You're not pushing the blood. The force of the blood flow you're getting from the ventricular contraction. Right? So why do you have muscles in your blood vessels? To increase or decrease the diameter of the vessel, to perform either vasoconstriction or vasodilation. Whether I will dilate the vessel or I will constrict the vessel. This is a function here of the smooth muscles. So this will make my vascular arteries to become active in vasoconstriction. And why do I need to allow vasoconstriction to take place, or vasodilation?
For the blood pressure
To regulate my blood pressure. So, something to keep in mind at this point. What's blood pressure? What is blood pressure? So if you are driving on a highway with a high speed and you decided to open the windows, what's going to happen of your car? What's going to happen? Air will flow and your ears will pop, right? You will feel pressure on your eardrums. Why you didn't have this pressure before? Because the pressure was applied on your windows, right? So I did have this pressure applied on my window. When I open the window, what's going to happen? The air will flow and it will start to apply pressure on my eardrums. So my ears will start to pop. So what is pressure? What we need to understand, what's pressure? What's pressure? This is flow against resistance. Pressure means flow and resistance. Alright, so if I don't have airflow, will I have a pressure? No. So the most important information now is what is pressure. This is flow against resistance. If I don't have flow, I don't have pressure. And if I don't have resistance, will I have pressure? No. Alright, so two factors here, two major factors that we're going to discuss later on today that will affect my blood pressure or any pressure: flow and resistance. So what will affect the resistance? What resistance are we discussing in here, in the blood vessels? The resistance of your vessel here. So which one will apply more resistance? A large lumen or a small lumen? Which one will apply more resistance? Smaller one. So if I want to decrease my blood pressure, what I will do to the diameter of my blood vessels? Increase or decrease? Increase. I want to increase the diameter of the blood vessel, and as I increase the diameter of the blood vessel, what's going to happen to the resistance? Resistance will go down, and as you decrease resistance, what happens to the blood pressure? Blood pressure will go down. And if you have a drop in your blood pressure, you want to increase your blood pressure, what are you going to do to your vascular arteries? Constriction. I will constrict, and when I constrict, I increase resistance, and as I increase resistance, what's going to happen to the pressure? It will increase. Alright, so moving on to the next type of vessels, here would be my arterioles, and this would be the smallest type of the arteries. that will be leading to the capillary beds. They will control the flow into the capillary beds by vasodilation and constriction. So I have the same concept here. I have my smooth muscles that will allow the amount to increase or decrease the amount of blood flowing into my capillary beds. Moving on to another type of blood vessels, this is my capillaries. My capillaries, those will be the smallest type of all the blood vessels, and they will have a wall of thin tunica intima, and I am 1 cell thick. Size will allow a single RBC to pass at a time. So you have a very small diameter. It's only allowing one red blood cell to pass at a time. And I have a very delicate membrane formed of one row of cells. I have one cell forming my wall. I have capillaries in all my tissues. Can you give me exceptions for tissues that won't have capillaries? One of them that we've just mentioned a minute ago. Epithelium. Epithelium didn't have capillaries. I was avascular. That's why I did rely on the connective tissue below to get my nutrition and oxygenation.
And your eyes, right? And your retina.
You do?
Wait, hold on. There are like 4 types that don't have that.
So we have epithelium,
That's one of them.
we have cornea, and lens of the eye. Cornea and lens. So here, if you're drawing the eye here, if I'm drawing the eye, what would be the pathway of the light? You remember from MP1.
Like that's the dot.
So the first layers that you will pass through will be cornea, then you will pass through the pupil of the iris, and then you will pass through the lens. So what's going to happen if you didn't have capillaries in the cornea and lens? When the
Yeah, it'll affect your vision.
Yeah, it will prevent the passage of the light, or at least it will discolor it. Everything will appear red in color, right? Alright, so another tissue that won't have capillaries was my cartilage. My cartilage didn't have capillaries, and as you remember, it's very hard to heal because of this. You can easily heal your bones, but you cannot for the cartilage. If I did have fracture in my meniscus of the knee, it's very hard to heal. Why? Again, because the cartilage is avascular. Avascular. You can heal your bones, but it's very difficult to heal your cartilage. Again, why? Because it's avascular. I don't have capillaries. I'm not getting enough nutrition and oxygenation to my cartilage. Functions here of the capillaries will be to allow the exchange that will be taking place between your blood and the tissue cells. Like what exchange will be taking place and you want it to take place? What exchange will you perform between the blood and the cells? Why do you deliver blood to your cells?
Oxygen.
To get the oxygen, to get the nutrients. What else? Yes, I'm delivering oxygen, I'm delivering nutrients through my capillaries. What else? I would be removing what? What would you like to remove from your cells? I remove toxins, waste products, I remove carbon dioxide. Alright? Moving on to the capillaries. Capillaries will be divided according to the structure into 3 major types. I have the continuous capillaries, fenestrated capillaries, and sinusoidal capillaries. First type of capillaries, this is the most abundant and the least permeable. It's located in your brain, skin, muscles, and in between the cells that will form my continuous capillaries, I will have tight junctions. Function here will allow the passage of fluid and small solids through the intercellular cleft. So you have small spaces between the cells of the capillaries that will allow fluid to pass from inside of your blood to the cells. I'm only allowing fluid, I'm only allowing small solids, not large particles. So you cannot pass glucose, for example, through a continuous capillaries. I cannot allow protein to pass from the blood to the tissues through my continuous capillaries. Only small solids, only small solids. You cannot allow large molecules to pass, or cells. So this is how the continuous capillary will look like. So as you see, I have a thin layer of connective tissue. This is my basement membrane. I have one row of endothelial cells that will be forming the capillary. I have a diameter that will only allow one red blood cell to pass at a time. I have a very narrow diameter. And as you see on here, I do have small spaces between the cells. Those again are called my intercellular clefts, through which I will be passing the fluid and small solids, and this will allow the exchange to be taking place between my capillaries and my cells. The other type of capillaries, this is the fenestrated capillaries, and as you see here, I have pores in my endothelial cells. And those pores, what do you think? I will increase the ability to exchange. I am more permeable compared to the continuous type. I am more permeable. What organ do you think I need a higher permeability? In my... So lungs will only pass gases.
So you don't really
Yeah, so small particles. So I don't need a higher digestive system, exactly. So in my digestive system, in my especially small intestine, I'm allowing large molecules to pass. I'm absorbing the nutrients. So I need higher or lower permeability. I need higher permeability. So I will be using what kind of capillaries? In my small intestine, I will be using fenestrated capillaries. What else? Where else do you need a higher permeability rather than the continuous type?
Kidneys.
Kidneys. Why do you need more permeability in your kidneys? What is the function of the kidney? Filter blood. So I'm allowing large solids here to pass, like urea, uric acid. I want them to get out of my circulation. So I will need fenestrated capillaries in my kidneys, allowing more permeability compared to the continuous type. What else? What other organ? Liver. As we're going to see, we will need a larger and more permeable type of capillaries in the liver. Even more permeable than the fenestrated capillaries. Here, my endocrine glands. Why do you need fenestrated capillaries in your endocrine glands, do you think? I'm releasing hormones. I'm releasing large chemical compounds that will need to travel from my cells to the bloodstream. So I will need a more permeable type of capillaries, which is my fenestrated capillaries. Moving on to the most permeable type of the three, those will be my sinusoidal capillaries. And those will have fewer junctions between the cells. They will have larger intercellular clefts, and they will have large pores, and they will have large loops. Where do you think you need the most permeable type of capillaries? So we did have the fenestrated capillaries in the intestine. We did have it in endocrine gland. We did have them in the kidney. But where I will need a higher level of permeability?
Okay.
Spleen. And you've mentioned earlier, liver. What else?
Bone marrow.
Bone marrow. Why? Why those three? Why I need the highest level of permeability in my bone marrow, spleen, and liver? What I'm exchanging with those organs?
Larger molecules.
Large molecules, and most importantly will be cells. So where do you get your blood cells from? Where do you get them from? From the bone marrow. So they need to travel from the bone marrow to the bloodstream. How? Through what type of capillaries again? My sinusoidal capillaries. My sinusoidal capillaries will allow the passage of cells from the bone marrow to the bloodstream. And as you see here, I'm allowing also large molecules, more complex molecules, like glycogen, for example, in my liver. The fat, the lipids that I will be metabolizing in my liver, those are huge molecules. They need to be able to pass between my liver cells and my bloodstream. So I would need more permeable, much more permeable type of capillaries. This would be my sinusoidal capillaries. So what vessels carry blood away from the heart? Can you remind me? Arteries. Arteries. Arteries will be carrying the blood away from the heart. Another classification of the capillaries will be according to their function. Here it's a functional classification. I will be classifying the capillaries into vascular shunts or metarterioles and capillaries. So what is the difference, or true capillaries? What's the difference between the vascular shunts and the true capillaries? Vascular shunts are, just from the name, what can you understand? It's just a connection between the arteriole and the venule. It's not allowing any exchange to take place with the cells. Compared to the true capillaries, those will allow the exchange to take place between the bloodstream and my cells. So again, what is the difference between shunts and vascular shunts or metarterioles and the true capillaries? True capillaries will allow the exchange to take place, and those will be between 10 to 100 true capillary per capillary bed. Compared to the shunt is only a connection that will allow the passage of the blood from the arteriole to the venule without a performing exchange. So why do you think you have shunts? Why don't you just have true capillaries? If the main function here is to allow exchange with the blood, with the tissue cells, to allow the exchange to take place between the bloodstream and the tissue cells. Why not just have true capillaries, and why you still have shunts?
In case one capillary gets blocked, there's other ways for it to go.
So you can simply get many true capillaries, but why would I have a shunt? Just a connection that won't perform any exchange with the tissue cells. You see here, at the base of the true capillaries, coming out of the vascular shunt, you have sphincters. Those muscles will be controlling the passage of the blood from the shunt to the true capillaries. So is there sometimes at which you don't want the exchange to take place with one of your organs? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So for example, can you give me an example? If I'm in a fight or flight situation, do I need a lot of blood to go to my stomach? Yes or no? No. I don't need to form a lot of exchange with my stomach or my gastrointestinal tract. So what I will do to reduce the amount of blood passing to my stomach, to my gastrointestinal tract, I will start to contract the precapillary sphincters, and I will just be shifting the blood from my arteriole to my venule without actually losing oxygen to those tissues. I want to divert the blood to my muscles. That's why, for example, don't study after you eat a heavy meal. Why? Because you will sleep. Yeah. You will drain all the blood to your stomach, to your gastrointestinal tract. You're dilating the precapillary sphincters. The precapillary sphincters here. So what you're going to do, you will get all the blood to your stomach, no blood to your brain, and you will go to bed. Alright? Alright, so again, what is the difference between a vascular shunt and the true capillaries? Vascular shunts are just connections between the arteriole and the venule. I'm not allowing the exchange to take place. Compared to the true capillaries, I'm allowing the exchange to take place. Can you remind me how many true capillaries I do have in my capillary bed, per capillary bed? 10 to 100 true capillary per capillary bed. Alright? So, can you remind me what's cardiac output? What's cardiac output? What's cardiac output? This is the amount of blood pumped per minute. Per minute. Alright, can you remind me what is the resting cardiac output? It's around 5 to 6 liters. 5 to 6 liters. So what you're going to do during exercise? During exercise, what happens to your cardiac output? This is what we've mentioned back with the heart. What's going to happen when you exercise to the cardiac output? It will increase. And remember why it will increase? Because cardiac output is stroke volume times heart rate. So during exercise, you're increasing the force of contraction of the heart, increasing the stroke volume, the amount of blood pumped per beat, and you are increasing the heart rate, the number of beats per minute, and as a result, you will be increasing the amount of blood pumped per minute. So you can reach a cardiac output during exercise around 18 liters or something. Or 30 liters if you are an athlete. So this is what we mentioned back with the heart, but you can see this diagram. You didn't only increase the amount of blood pumped from your ventricles, you did also redistribute this increased cardiac output. So you see here, the brain, for example, is receiving the same amount of blood, whether in rest or in exercise. Compared to your muscles, you see, my skeletal muscles are receiving around a liter of blood in resting conditions, and during exercise, it's getting 12 times the amount of blood. I'm getting almost 13 liters of blood. Compared to, for example, my abdominal organs. In resting conditions, they are receiving around 1.5 liters of blood. In exercise, I will receive much less blood, around 0.5 liter. So what did you do? You didn't only increase the amount of blood pumped from your heart, you did also redistribute this blood according to which organs you need most during exercise. So during exercise, I need to get more blood to flow to my heart. I need to get more blood to flow to my skeletal muscles. But I don't need the blood to go to my abdominal organs. I don't want all this blood to be filtered now when I'm exercising. What do you think? The skin. Will the skin get more or less blood? What's going to happen to your skin temperature during exercise? Will it be hot or cold? Hot. Why? Because you get more blood to your skin. Why? Why do you get more blood to your skin? Temperature, yeah. What happens to the temperature? I want to reduce the body temperature. How do you reduce the body temperature? By sweating and by conducting the heat out by radiation. I am losing heat by radiation to the outside. So I want more blood to go to my skin to lose this heat, as 60% of the energy consumed by your skeletal muscles will be generated as heat, and only 40% will be as a mechanical work. So if you did consume 100 calories to perform a certain work, this work can be done only with 40 calories, and 60 calories has been released as in the form of heat. Alright? So again here, during exercise, I'm not only increasing my cardiac output, but also I am redistributing this increased cardiac output. And again, how would I redistribute my blood between the organs? Precapillary sphincters. Precapillary sphincters. Need more blood to go to a certain organ, for example, skeletal muscles. You will start to dilate the precapillary sphincters, so the blood now is able to go to my skeletal muscles. And during exercise, what you're gonna do? You will contract the precapillary sphincters of the capillary beds in your gastrointestinal tract. So you get less blood to the abdominal organs, more blood to your skeletal muscles. This is how I will be able to redistribute my blood. Moving on to the venous system, I have two types of veins. I have the very tiny veins that would be draining the capillary beds, and those are my venules. Those venules will drain into larger vessels. Those are my veins. Venules will look very similar to my capillaries. They will be very porous. They will allow fluid and white blood cells to get in and out of my tissues. Most capillary venules will be consisting of one layer of endothelium, like what we've seen with the capillaries, with an extra layer of pericytes. So some layers will be scattered between the endothelial cells. Those are called my pericytes. As the venules will become larger, they will start to form one or two layers of smooth muscle cells. So I will start to gain more muscle cell layers. The venules will drain then into larger vessels. Those are my veins. And another name that we use for the veins would be my capacitance vessel. Can you see on here, this diagram here, which one is an artery, which one is a vein? What do you think? This is a vein, this is an artery. Right? So which one has thicker tunica media is my artery compared to the vein. Which one has a thicker wall will be my artery, thinner wall will be my vein. Which one will have a larger lumen? Vein. And that's why it's called my capacitance vessels. Why? Because simply 60% of your circulation, 60% of your blood volume at any time will be located in your veins. You see, more than half of your blood volume is located all the time in your veins. Compared to, for example, 15% will be in the arteries, 12% will be in the pulmonary circulation, heart will keep 8% of the blood, capillaries will have 5% of my blood. So most of the blood will be located in my veins. Why do you think you keep, what did allow you to keep most of the blood in your veins?
Bigger.
I have a larger lumen, this is one thing. What else? I have low pressure. I have low pressure. I don't have a strong pressure in my veins to keep the blood moving out of the veins. I have a larger lumen, thin wall, have less pressure within my veins. That's why they are my capacitance vessels. Capacitance vessels. And that's why I do have valves. Why you do have valves in your veins to prevent the backflow of the blood. Backflow of the blood. So as you have a very low pressure, you want the blood to keep going back to the heart, so you will need valves to prevent the backflow of the blood in your veins. Alright, so we're looking here at the different types of blood pressure. Different types of blood pressure. You have systemic pressure, as you see, systemic pressure during ventricular contraction in the big arteries, aorta and its branches, it would be around 120 millimeter mercury. Compared to during ventricular relaxation, diastolic pressures, this would be around 80 millimeter mercury. As you keep moving away from the heart, what's going to happen to the pressure? The pressure will start to decrease. And what we notice on here is that also the difference between the systolic and the diastolic pressures will start to decrease, and it won't be noticed anymore starting from my capillaries.
That's why you can only feel your pulse in your arteries.
Exactly. That's why I only feel the pulse in my arteries, as we're going to mention in a second. Alright, so What is systolic blood pressure? Systolic blood pressure. This is the. This is not the ventricular contraction. This is the pressure of what? Of the blood.
During
Where?
the wall of the artery.
Applied to the wall of the vessel. Was it an artery, capillary, vein? When? During ventricular contraction. Systolic pressure. So again, think of those questions. This is the pressure of what? Don't forget, this is the pressure applied by the blood flow. On what? On the wall of the vessel. When? During ventricular contractions, this is systolic pressure. What's diastolic pressure then? What's diastolic pressure? The pressure of the blood flow on the wall of the vessel during ventricular relaxation. Alright? What's pulse pressure? This is the difference between systolic and diastolic pressures. This is what you can feel in here. When you're checking a pulse, what you feel is the difference between systolic and diastolic. During ventricular relaxation, you have a blood flow and it has a pressure. This is my diastolic pressure. What I can feel is the difference between systolic and diastolic. So when the blood pressure increases from 80 millimeter mercury to 120 millimeter mercury, this is what I feel, the change. You can feel change. You don't feel the pressure. Like what? Can you feel the change? Can you feel the movement, rotational movement? Yes or no? So if you did rotate like this,
Yeah, you feel it.
can you feel it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. It's like,
So is the Earth rotating?
yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Can you feel it?
No.
Why?
It's all the time.
It's constant. What you can feel is acceleration and deceleration. You can feel change. You don't feel the rotational movement itself. You are feeling the change in speed in the rotational movement. Same concept here. If I put my hand on a blood vessel, which won't have a change in the blood pressure, like a vein. Can you feel a pulse in the vein?
No.
No. Why? Simply because I don't have difference between systolic and diastolic blood pressures. What I can feel is the change. There's a difference between systolic and diastolic. This is what we call again my pulse pressure. Pulse pressure. Pulse pressure again is the difference between systolic and diastolic pressures. So if you decided to study arterial pressure, to study the effects of a drug on arterial pressure, which type of pressure would you consider in your study? Would you consider systolic? Would you consider diastolic? Would you consider pulse pressure? Would you consider something else? So yes, exactly. This is a key. In order to study the effects of something, or in order to get a general idea about blood pressure, we need to put into consideration the blood pressure during ventricular contraction, the blood pressure during ventricular relaxation, and the difference between those pressures. I need to study all the three in the same time. That's why we did create what we call the mean arterial pressure. What's mean? Mean means average. This is the average pressure in my arteries all the time. How would you calculate the mean arterial pressure? Mean arterial pressure is equal to the diastolic pressure plus 1/3 of the pulse pressure. So can you calculate the mean arterial pressure of somebody with 120/80 millimeter mercury? Yeah. What's it? So you got here diastolic pressure is 80
Yeah.
plus 1/3 of the pulse pressure. Pulse pressure is the difference between systolic and diastolic. So 120 minus 80 is 120 minus 80.
40.
40. Yes. So 1/3 of 40 is Yeah, 13.3.
Only because we did it last time.
13.3, and then you got 80 plus 13.3. This will make around 83.3, right? 93.3. 93.3. All right. So again, you got diastolic pressure 80, 1/3 of the pulse pressure. This is 1/3 of 40. This would make around 93.3 millimeter mercury. This would be the mean arterial pressure. And this is the type of pressure that I will be considering while I'm studying the arterial pressure. Capillary blood pressure. This is the pressure of the blood in my capillaries. And the pressure of the blood in my capillaries will be very low, between 15 to 35 millimeter mercury. And why I don't need to have higher pressure in my capillaries?
Because they're so thin.
They are so thin, so they are so delicate and fragile. So if you did increase the blood pressure within the capillaries, what's going to happen? They will, boom, rupture. They want to be able to tolerate a higher pressure. So that's why I would keep the capillary pressure between 15 to 35 millimeter mercury. Another thing that in which I don't need to get a higher pressure in my capillaries because simply they are permeable. They can already pass the fluid in and out of the vessel. I don't need to have a higher blood pressure within my capillaries to allow the fluid to pass to the outside or back to the inside. I am permeable. I have my fenestrate, I have my pores in my fenestrated capillaries, I have my intercellular clefts, I have the large intercellular clefts and large pores like what we've seen with the sinusoidal capillaries. I am permeable. I can pass things in and out of my vessels. I don't need a higher pressure. Compared to the venous pressure would be the lowest here, the lowest pressure, which would be around 15 millimeter mercury. It will go down, be dropped in much lower in the superior and inferior vena cava as you get closer to your heart or right atrium. So how do you get the blood back from your legs, for example, to your heart? If I have a very low pressure like this, what do you think? What would allow me to get the blood back from my leg veins to my heart? I have two major factors here, two major pumps. First pump is the fact that you are always compressing your leg veins by the muscle contractions. This is what we call the muscle pump. So when you walk, what's going to happen? Your muscles will start to compress your leg veins. This is my muscle here. This will be one of my leg veins. So what's going to happen when you contract your muscles? You are compressing the veins. And when you compress the veins, what's going to happen to the volume of the vein? It will decrease. And can you remind me what's the relation between volume and pressure? So when you decrease volume, what's going to happen to the pressure inside? It will increase. Like anything, it moves from a high pressure to low pressure. So you are creating a high pressure in here at the point at which you are compressing the vein. And as you increase the pressure, what's going to happen? The blood will start to move from a high pressure to lower pressure. So is it up or down?
Because of valves.
Alright, but I have valves here that will be preventing the backflow of the blood. So the only path for the blood now will be up back to my heart. So when I contract my leg muscles, what's going to happen? Compressing veins, creating high pressure, preventing the backflow of the blood down by having valves. So the only path for the blood will be up back to my right atrium. This is what we call the muscle pump. Another pump that I do have would be the respiratory pump. So if I have a coronal section, frontal section of the chest, This is how it looks like. So you have a diaphragm here. You will have your ribs like this. Inside your chest you will have 2 lungs, as you remember. And those lungs are surrounded by a serous membrane. Can you remind me what was the name of the serous membrane in your surrounding the lungs? My pleura, exactly. So the pleura will be, like in serous membrane, will be formed of 2 layers. A layer that will be in direct contact to the lung tissue. This is my visceral. And another layer that will be attached to the wall of the thoracic cage. This will be my parietal layer. So you have visceral layer attached to the lung, parietal layer attached to lining the inside of your chest. So what's going to happen here? Your lungs are elastic sacs. What I mean by this? So let me get a glove. Can you get me a glove, please? Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Alright, so let's imagine this is my lung. I have a lot of elastic tissue in the wall of my lung. So what's going to happen when you inflate this glove? This glove has tendency to expand more as I inflate it, or has tendency to recoil. What do you think? So if this is my glove, I'm talking about the glove now. So if you did push air in, will it keep expanding? So it has tendency to expand, or when you give it a chance, it has tendency to recoil and return back to its normal size. Recoil. So my lungs have tendency to recoil. I have a lot of elastic tissue. My lungs have tendency to recoil. They have tendency to move back in, like this. I have tendency to recoil, to collapse. So if I did get lungs out of my chest, what's going to happen? They will start to collapse. Like this glove will have tendency to recoil. Compared to the muscles, muscles will have tendency to contract. So when a person dies, what's going to happen to the muscles? Muscles will start to contract. I will have rigor mortis. So muscles have tendency to, if you don't do anything about the muscles will start to contract. Relaxation is an active process. You need to expend energy to relax your muscles. So if you're running so fast, you can get a cramp and you won't be able to complete the marathon or whatever, simply because you did consume the energy and your muscles are not able to contract. So your muscles have tendency, you don't have energy to relax. So your muscles here will have tendency to contract. And when you contract your intercostal muscles, what's going to happen to your chest? When I contract the muscles of my chest, what's going to happen? My chest will expand.
Yeah.
Right? So here, the chest has tendency to expand, and the lungs inside have tendency to recoil. What's in between? What's attaching your lungs to the chest wall? Pleura.
How do you spell that?
Pleura, P-L-E-U-R-A. Alright? So, alright, so here I have one layer that will be attached to the lungs, and the other layer is my parietal layer will be lining the inside of my thoracic cage. So as you separate the 2 layers away from each other, what pressure would you create? Would you create a negative pressure or a positive pressure within your chest? If I'm moving the 2 layers away from each other. There is elastic arteries, vein, arteries. Elastic arteries. So the closer you are to the heart, the higher the blood pressure would be. So the lowest will be in my capillaries. The lowest will be in my veins. And as you remember, capillaries will have a blood pressure of 15 to 35 millimeter mercury. Veins will have a lower pressure, below 15 millimeter mercury. So here, can you remind me what's blood pressure? What's blood pressure?
Pressure of
This
the
is blood. This is the pressure of the blood applied by the blood flow on the wall of the vessel. So if you're looking here, this is my vessel. This is my blood inside. This flow is pushing the wall out. This is called my blood pressure. So any pressure, as we've mentioned, is flow against resistance. What's flowing inside your blood vessels? This is my cardiac output. And what is the resistance that is facing this blood flow will be the resistance applied by the vessel itself. This is my peripheral resistance. If I want to get pressure, mean arterial pressure, as we've mentioned, this is the blood pressure, the average blood pressure that you have in your arteries. So I will be able to calculate this by getting the cardiac output, the amount of blood pumped per minute, times the total peripheral resistance, the resistance applied by all the arteries of my systemic circulation. So two main factors here that will affect your blood pressure, cardiac output, and total peripheral resistance. Another factor that will affect my blood pressure will be my blood volume, which is the amount of blood that you have in your circulation. Three factors here affecting my blood pressure were my cardiac output, total peripheral resistance, and blood volume. So let's do numbers here. So if I'm saying my blood pressure is 5 and my resistance is 1, cardiac output is 5. 5 times 1 equals 5. So what's going to be the effect if I did increase the cardiac output? So rather than having a cardiac output of 5, I have it 6 now, 6 liters. This will increase or decrease my blood pressure? Increase. What if I did have an increase in the total peripheral resistance? Rather than have a total peripheral resistance of 1, I have total peripheral resistance of 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. So you see here, the main players that will affect your blood pressure would be the resistance of the vessels. Resistance of the vessel. Also, if you are affecting the cardiac output, this will affect your blood pressure. Alright, so again, mean arterial pressure is cardiac output times total peripheral resistance. As I increase cardiac output, I increase mean arterial pressure. As I increase total peripheral resistance, I increase mean arterial pressure. Another factor here will be by blood volume. What do you think? If I have a blood volume of 5 liters, will apply the same pressure like 6 liters? Yes or no? So I will tell you the example in another way. I have a bottle that has 6 liters and another bottle that has water, 6 liters of water. Which one will apply more pressure if I put them on this table? Which one will apply more pressure on this table? One was 5 or one was 6? 1 was 6. So the higher the blood volume, the higher the pressure that will be applied. Alright? So how I do regulate my blood pressure? First I have central control, which are through the nervous system and the endocrine system. I have neural control here by baroreceptors and chemoreceptors. Baroreceptors, those are receptors that will have the ability to detect the amount of stretch applied to the wall of the vessel. So if I have more stretch, this means I have high or low pressure. I have a high blood pressure. And if I have less stretch of the wall of the vessel, this means I have a low blood pressure. So again, what kind of receptors will be able to detect the amount of stretch applied to the wall of the vessel? Those are called my baroreceptors.
Another type of receptors that will give you an idea about your blood pressure will be chemoreceptors. And those are detecting here the changes of the blood chemistry. So for example here, if I have a high carbon dioxide level in my blood, what this means for you? Do you have a high or a low blood pressure? So if I do have a lot of carbon dioxide, am I able, this means I was able to deliver a lot of blood to my lungs or less blood to my lungs? Less blood. So I have low or high pressure to push the blood. What do you think?
Low.
So here, this is my lung. This is my lung.
Okay.
And the blood is coming out having high carbon dioxide level. So this means I was not able to deliver a lot of blood to my lungs. So in other words, I didn't have enough pressure to push the blood to the lungs. So if I have high carbon dioxide, this means I didn't have low pressure, right? Because I was not able to deliver the blood to the lungs, so this means I have a high, this will be figured out by having a high carbon dioxide level in the circulation. Same concept for pH. If I have low pH, means I have a acid accumulation in my blood. What this means? This means that you did not filter the blood into your kidney. And if you did not filter the blood into your kidney, this means you didn't have enough pressure to push the blood to your kidneys. So if I have lots of acids, I have a low pH, this means for me that I have low pressure. So again, what kind of receptors will allow you to detect changes of the blood chemistry? Decrease in carbon dioxide, increase in the carbon dioxide, decrease in your pH would be my chemoreceptors. And according to those changes that will be taking place either in the wall of the vessel or in the chemistry of the blood, you will be sending signals to the brain that will be responding to those changes by constricting or dilating your blood vessels. Again, which vessels would you dilate or constrict? What arteries? Elastic, vascular, or arterioles? Which one?
Vascular. Elastic.
Which one? Which one will have vasoactive ability?
Veins for vasodilation and vasoconstriction.
Vasoconstriction. Vaso means blood vessel, generally speaking. This doesn't mean a vein. Vaso means blood vessel. Alright? So, am I controlling my blood pressure by constricting and dilating arterioles, vascular arteries, or elastic arteries? Vascular arteries, remember I did have a thick tunica media with a lot of muscles in the wall, so I have an active vasoconstriction ability, so I can control my blood pressure using my vascular arteries. Alright? Also, arterioles will share in determining the blood pressure because also they have a vasoactive ability, as they can constrict or dilate according to your blood pressure. Again, according to what you will be dilating or constricting your blood vessels, according to the signals received from the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors to your brain. Alright? Another type of central control will be through hormones. I have many hormones here that will share in regulating my blood pressure, and this includes my norepinephrine and epinephrine. Norepinephrine and epinephrine will enhance the fight and flight response by performing vasoconstriction. I am performing vasoconstriction to increase the blood pressure in case of fight or flight. Another type of hormones that would be increasing the blood pressure that we're going to be discussing in much more details in the kidney chapter. This would be my angiotensin II. Angio means vessel, blood vessel. Tensin means I am performing tension. I am performing vasoconstriction. So angiotensin is potent vasoconstrictor hormones that will be constricting the blood vessel, and as you constrict the blood vessel, what's going to happen to your peripheral resistance? When I reduce the diameter of the blood vessel, what happens to the resistance? It will increase. And when you increase resistance, what happens to the pressure? It increases. So you see here, main arterial pressure is cardiac output times resistance. So if you increase the resistance, you increase blood pressure. Alright? Another hormone that would be regulating your blood pressure would be the atrial natriuretic peptide. And from the name here, what can you understand about its function? I am atrial natriuretic peptide, so I am a protein in nature, I'm a peptide, and I am released from what part of the heart? Atrium. I'm called atrial. And what I mean by natriuretic, natriuretic means, remember, what's the name? What's the chemical symbol of sodium is Na. Actually, we give the atomic symbol to any of the elements according to the Latin name. So sodium in Latin is natrium. That's why the atomic symbol is Na. So what can you understand from the word natriuretic? Uresis means to release in urine. I'm releasing sodium in urine. And if I'm releasing sodium in urine, what's going to happen? So if this is the kidney tubule, this is my blood vessel, atrial natriuretic is passing sodium to the urine. So what's going to happen to the amount of sodium in the urine? It will increase. So I have higher concentration of sodium in the urine now compared to the blood. So what will follow any solute? Water. Water. So water will start to follow the sodium, and as you're losing water from your blood, what's going to happen to your blood pressure? Decrease. I'm losing fluid from my blood, so my blood volume will decrease, and as I decrease my blood volume, what's going to happen to my blood pressure? My blood pressure will decrease. Alright, so again, atrial natriuretic peptide is allowing you to lose sodium in urine. And as you lose sodium in urine, what's going to happen? You're releasing water in urine. And as you release water in urine, you're reducing blood volume. And as you reduce blood volume, what's going to happen? Blood pressure will go down. Another hormone that will be regulating your blood pressure would be the atrial antidiuretic hormone. And from the name here, ADH, atrial natriuretic, antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone. What do you understand here? This is a hormone that anti means prevents, and diuresis. What's diuresis? Water release in urine. Diuresis is water release in urine. So if you're preventing diuresis, antidiuretic, what's going to happen? If I'm preventing water loss in urine, what's going to happen to my blood volume? If you're not losing, you are gaining. If I'm drinking now and I'm not getting this water to the urine, what's going to happen to my blood volume? If I kept it in my circulation, it will increase. And as you increase volume, what's going to happen to your pressure? It will increase. So again, hormones here, main hormones that will be regulating your blood pressure. We've seen here norepinephrine and epinephrine. Those are vasoconstrictors. They will be released in case of fight or flight to increase your blood pressure. As you increase resistance, you increase pressure. Another hormone here, angiotensin II, from the name, it's constricting the blood vessel. And as you constrict the blood vessel, you are increasing the resistance. And as you increase the resistance, you increase pressure. atrial and natriuretic peptide, the hormone released from the atria of the heart to enhance the release of sodium in urine. And as you release sodium in urine, water will follow. And as you release water out of your circulation, your blood volume will go down. And as you decrease the blood volume, your blood pressure will be reduced. Another hormone that we've mentioned, anti-diuretic hormone, it prevents diuresis. Prevents diuresis. What I mean by preventing diuresis, I'm not allowing water to pass in urine. So I keep water in my blood. And as you keep water in your blood, what's going to happen? Blood volume increase, and as you increase blood volume, blood pressure will increase. Moving on to a very closely related topic to the blood pressure will be my tissue perfusion. The question now, why do you need to maintain a normal blood pressure? So I can understand that I don't want to increase the blood pressure above a certain limit to not cause rupture of the capillaries, for example. But why do you want to not have a very low blood pressure as well? To get the oxygen to the tissues. In other words, allowing blood to flow in the capillaries between your cells, to allow this exchange to be taking place between your circulation and your tissue cells. If I don't have enough pressure, I won't have tissue perfusion, which is a blood flow through the body tissues. And again, why I need the blood to flow between my tissue cells to allow the exchange to take place, to deliver oxygen, to deliver nutrients, to remove waste, to allow the gas exchange to take place in your lungs. I need the oxygen to pass from my lung tissue to the blood. I need the carbon dioxide to be removed out of my blood to my lungs, to get rid of it, to allow the absorption of the nutrients in my gastrointestinal tract. Try to imagine that you did eat right now, but there is no blood going to your small intestine. Will you be able to absorb those nutrients into your bloodstream? If you're not getting blood to your intestinal cells, will you be able to perform the absorption? No. So I won't be able to absorb the nutrients. If I'm not getting enough blood to be delivered to my kidneys, will I be able to form urine? Will I be able to filter the blood? No. So I need the blood, I need tissue perfusion in my kidneys to allow urine formation. So again here, main functions here of the tissue perfusion. Why do you need the blood to flow in between the tissue cells to allow the delivery of oxygen and nutrients, remove waste, gas exchange that will be taking place in the lungs, allowing absorption in the digestive tract, and urine formation in your kidneys. I have another type of regulation other than the central regulation. This is called my auto-regulation. In the auto-regulation, those will be localized in the blood vessels, terminal vessels. And this will adjust the blood flow going to the organ. I have two types of intrinsic auto-regulations. I have the metabolic auto-regulation and I have the myogenic auto-regulation. What is the metabolic auto-regulation? I will start to vasodilate my arterioles and relaxing the pre-capillary sphincters when I have a low oxygen delivery to my tissues. Or I have metabolically active substance that will be increased in my tissues, like hydrogen accumulation, like adenosine, like potassium, like prostaglandins. What this means? If I have a blood vessel in here, and this blood vessel has low oxygen, does this mean you have a high or low blood pressure? Or I have, let's say, increased potassium, increased hydrogen, or prostaglandins, whatever. This means I have a high or a low blood pressure. What do you think? Low blood pressure. So how do you think I will respond to this low blood pressure? Will I perform vasoconstriction or dilation? Constriction, right? But I'm telling you here that I will be performing vasodilation of the arterioles. How can you explain this?
It's going to be in the muscular arteries where the constriction takes place, whereas in dilation of the arterioles to get more blood flow to the capillary beds.
So you mean you will constrict all the vascular arteries to increase the total peripheral resistance? At the same time, you will dilate the arterioles to increase the amount of blood flows. Yes. So the difference here between this central regulation, it will affect all the arterioles, all the vascular arteries in the body. This is a localized regulation. So, for example, if I am not getting enough oxygen to my kidney here, I need to constrict all the blood vessels, all the arterioles, and vascular arteries of my blood, and as a result, I will increase my blood pressure. But at this point where I have low oxygen, I need to get more blood to my kidney. So if you did perform vasoconstriction of this artery, you will be getting less blood to the kidney. So you don't want to do this. This is the difference here between the autoregulation and the central regulation. In an autoregulation, it's a localized regulation. The tissue where it has deficiency of oxygen delivery, or it has potassium hydrogen accumulation, prostaglandins, you need to get more blood to this specific organ. So you need to increase the blood pressure by constricting the other arterioles, the other vascular arteries. At the same time, you need to dilate the blood vessels, getting the blood to this specific organ. So if I have a low oxygen delivery and increased potassium hydrogen prostaglandin, I will perform vasodilation in here. Same concept will be applied for the myogenic regulation. The blood vessel, how the blood vessel will respond to stretch. If I have a lot of stretch applied to the wall, excessive stretch applied to the wall of the blood vessel, this means I have a high or a low blood pressure? High. And if I have less stretch applied to the wall of the vessel, this means I have a high or a low blood pressure. At this point, I have a low blood pressure, right? How do you think this blood vessel will respond to this change in blood pressure? If you have more stretch, what this vessel will do, it will constrict or dilate. It will constrict, vasoconstriction. Why? If you have high pressure, we mentioned that you want to dilate the vessel to reduce your blood pressure. But here I'm talking about localized blood pressure. I'm talking at the blood pressure at an organ level. Let's say kidney. So if I have high pressure getting to the kidney, you want to constrict the blood vessel carrying the blood to the kidney, not perform a generalized vasoconstriction. Alright, so yes, you will dilate all the blood vessels to reduce the mean arterial pressure, but in the same time, you want to reduce the tissue perfusion going to the kidney. So the vessel here will respond to this increased stretch by performing vasoconstriction. What about if you have a reduced stretch of your blood vessel? This means I have low tissue perfusion to this organ. I'm getting low blood to my kidney, for example, in here. So what do you think the response of the blood vessel to this low tissue perfusion to the kidney? It will dilate. If I did have a generalized low blood pressure, what will I do? I will be performing vasoconstriction to increase my mean arterial pressure. But if I have a low tissue perfusion at a localized site, at a specific organ, I will dilate the blood vessel, getting blood to my organ. So don't get confused here. Those are not contradicting. If I have a generalized low blood pressure, my baroreceptors will increase my blood. So if I have a generalized low blood pressure, my baroreceptors will detect this low blood pressure by detecting low stretch of the blood vessels, and they will send signals to your brain, and your brain will respond by performing generalized vasoconstriction to increase your blood pressure. But if you have low stretch here on a blood vessel in a localized organ, this means I have low tissue perfusion to this specific organ. So you don't want to vasoconstrict this blood vessel, you want to dilate it, to get more blood to be delivered to this specific organ. This is generalized, this is localized. Alright, those are not two contradicting effects. Alright, those will work together to maintain a normal blood delivery to your organs. So again, in a myogenic controls, I have a passive stretch here. This is increased intravascular pressure that promotes increased tone and vasoconstriction. If I have reduced stretch, this will promote vasodilation, and as a result I will increase the blood flow going to my tissue. So let's look here on this diagram. It has all the different factors that will affect the blood pressure. So you have metabolic controls like what? Like pH, like oxygen. If I have a reduction in the oxygen or pH, what's going to happen to my blood pressure? You do need to increase or I need to increase my or decrease my blood pressure. What do you think? So again here, I have low pH, low oxygen. This means for you, you have a high or low pressure.
You have a low pressure.
I have a low pressure. So I need to increase or decrease my blood pressure. I need to increase my blood pressure. Increase my blood pressure. So what do you think? I will dilate or constrict?
Constrict on a mean arterial pressure.
So central, if I am looking at central control, I want to constrict the blood vessel. But if I'm looking at a localized organ, I have a low tissue perfusion, I have this low pH, low oxygen at a specific site, I need to dilate the vessel. Alright? Same concept here will be applied. If you have an increased amount of carbon dioxide and potassium, this means for you, you have low or high blood pressure.
Low blood pressure.
I have low blood pressure. I don't have enough oxygen. I have a lot of I have a lot of carbon dioxide. I have a lot of potassium. All this means for me, I have a low blood pressure. As I have a low blood pressure, what we need to do? You need to increase this blood pressure. You need to increase this blood pressure. So will you constrict or dilate according to whether it's detected by a baroreceptors or it's a localized effect? If I'm looking at intrinsic regulation, this will be dilating the vessel to reduce the amount of blood delivered. Oh, I'm sorry, I want to dilate the vessel to increase the amount of blood delivered to this localized organ. But if I have a generalized effect, an extrinsic mechanism, I did detect this increased carbon dioxide by the chemoreceptors of my blood vessels, I want to constrict the blood vessels to increase my mean arterial pressure. Alright? Myogenic controls, if I have a lot of stretch on a localized organ, on a localized blood vessel, I have a lot of stretch. How would you think I will respond to this excessive stretch? Dilate or constrict. So you see here, if I have increased stretch, how I will respond? So increase the stretch. This means you get a lot of blood to the kidney or less blood to the kidney.
You're getting a lot of
A lot of blood to the kidney. So you want to reduce this amount of blood. How would you do so? Vasoconstriction. What about if I have reduced stretch? Low stretches. This means I have low tissue perfusion. And if you have low tissue perfusion, you will be performing vasodilation to get more blood to this tissue. Looking at extrinsic mechanisms, central controls, sympathetic innervation will cause vasoconstriction. Epinephrine and norepinephrine again will perform vasoconstriction if they work on alpha receptors. They can perform vasodilation in other blood vessels. Can you give me an example here? So where do you release epinephrine and norepinephrine?
adrenal glands.
From the adrenal glands, and when? In a fight and flight. Fight and flight. So I will be releasing the epinephrine and norepinephrine to dilate the vessels and constrict other vessels. Like what vessels do you want to dilate? Do you need to dilate or constrict the blood vessels going to your muscles, for example? Dilate. But in the same time, I want to increase the blood pressure, so I want to have a generalized vasoconstriction to increase my mean arterial pressure. So here, I will dilate some vessels and will constrict others according to location. And what allows me to do so will be the type of receptor on which the epinephrine and norepinephrine will be working on. If I'm working on alpha receptors, this will perform vasoconstriction. If I'm working on beta receptor, I will be dilating the blood vessel. Hormones here, like angiotensin II, antidiuretic hormone, all will cause vasoconstriction to increase your blood pressure. Atrial natriuretic peptide, this will reduce the diameter of the blood vessel by performing vasodilation, and as a result, it will cause a reduction in the blood pressure. We're going to be discussing much more details about those hormones later on in the next chapter. Alright, so how do you move more blood to skeletal muscles when needed to exercise? So will you open precapillary sphincters in the skeletal muscles? Will you close precapillary sphincters in less important organs? Will you be doing both of them, A and B, or will you do nothing? Both A and B. So remember, you need more blood to be delivered to your skeletal muscles, so you dilate the precapillary sphincters located in the around the capillary beds of your skeletal muscles. At the same time, for example, you want to reduce the amount of blood going to your gastrointestinal tract. So what you're going to do, you will start to constrict the precapillary sphincters going to the gastrointestinal tract for you to divert the blood from less important organ to more important organs that you're going to use during exercise, like your heart, like your skeletal muscles. Capillary exchange of respiratory gases and nutrients will be taking place mostly by diffusion here. So oxygen, carbon dioxide will pass from their high concentration gradient down their concentration. Lipid-soluble molecules will diffuse directly through the endothelial membranes. Water-soluble substance will pass either through clefts or fenestration. So let's see here. If I'm looking here at a lipid-soluble substance, it can just diffuse through the membrane. Remember, if I am lipid-soluble, I can pass by simple diffusion through the phospholipid bilayer of my epithelial cell membrane. If I am lipid-soluble, I can pass by diffusion through the phospholipid bilayer. But if I have charge, if I am water soluble, I have a charge, I'm not able to diffuse through the plasma membrane. I cannot pass through the phospholipid bilayer. So how can you pass from the blood vessel to the tissue and back from the tissue to the blood vessel, you need to pass either through the spaces between the cells, those are my intercellular clefts, or through the pores and fenestrations of the endothelial cells. If you are water soluble, you have charge, you cannot simply pass through the membrane. You need to pass either between the cells or through the pores and fenestrations of the endothelial cells. Alright? What if you're too big to pass here? Large molecules such as protein, how would I be able to pass them from my blood to my tissue and back from tissue to the blood? How do you think I would be able to pass them? I will pass them by pinocytosis. What's pinocytosis?
When it pinches in and becomes its own vesicle.
Yes, exactly. So if you remember here, dealing with large substance like glucose or protein, if I have glucose here, I'm not lipid soluble. I cannot pass through the phospholipid bilayer. Also, it's too big to pass between the cells or through the pores. So what I will do here, if I'm dealing with large molecule like glucose and proteins, and I want to pick them up from the bloodstream, what will I do? The cells here will start to engulf the fluid containing the substance. Remember, this is called my endocytosis. If I am getting fluid-based substance to the inside, this is what we call pinocytosis. And if I'm eating a solid substance, this was called phagocytosis. So here I'm dealing with a liquid substance. So I am getting fluid, and in this fluid I have this is a protein, the proteins that I need to pass to the inside of the cell. What's going to happen later on? The two sides here will fuse together, and you will form a vesicle containing the fluid and the substance that you want. So again, three ways by which you can perform the exchange between the blood and the tissue cells. First one is by simple diffusion. If you are moving a lipid-soluble substance, it can simply pass through the phospholipid bilayer of your endothelial cell membranes. If you're dealing with a water-soluble substance, but it's small, it's a small one, you can simply pass them between the cells, intercellular clefts, or through the endothelial cell pores, fenestrations. If you're dealing with a large substance, I will be able to move them in and out through pinocytosis. I will be eating the substance diluted in fluid. Right, so blood flow through the tissues is called what? What is it? Blood flows through the tissue. Tissue perfusion. Tissue perfusion. Exactly. Moving on to the homeostatic imbalances that will be related to the vascular system. First homeostatic imbalance that we are looking at is varicose veins. What is the problem with varicose veins? Varicose veins will be due to weak collagen fibers within the wall of the blood vessel. As you remember, how will I be able to push the blood back from my veins to the heart? Two factors. You do have vascular pump and you have the respiratory pump. And what allows you to maintain a unidirectional flow? Valves here. I have valves here that will maintain the unidirectional flow of the blood up back to the heart. So what if I have weak collagen that was not able to tolerate the pressure of the blood I would have defective and leaking valves. And if I have defective valves, what's going to happen? The blood will start to return back down. And as you start to return the blood back down, what's going to happen to the pressure of the blood inside your vein? Will it increase or decrease? What do you think?
Decrease.
What do you think? If you are, so let's say here, I'm pushing 5 liters up, rather than moving them up, all of the 5 liters, I'm getting 2 liters down of them because I have leaking valves. So next time, rather than pushing 5 liters, I'm pushing, if you get 2 down from those 5, so 2 did move down. So how many liters do you need to push now?
Yeah, so
5 plus 2 is 7. So you need to move 7 now. So you will be able to move 4 and you will get 3 here, returning back to you. So next time you will have 8. So as you increase the amount of blood you are expected to move up, what's going to happen to the pressure? As you increase volume, you increase pressure. So what's going to happen to the pressure inside here, inside my veins? It will increase. And as you increase the pressure of blood within your veins will start to dilate. Why? Because your veins are not designed to tolerate high pressure. They did have a thin wall, they have a larger lumen, they cannot tolerate a high pressure inside. So what's going to happen? Those veins will start to dilate, and this is how it will look like. Mostly will be taking place in the lower limbs. Around 15% of the adults will have varicose veins.
How can you prevent that?
So it's a matter of genes. So if you have a problem with the collagen fibers, I am more susceptible to get varicose veins. But I can reduce the likelihood of the varicose veins appearance by not standing for prolonged periods of time, to not sit down for prolonged periods of time. I need to elevate my legs. This is something that I can do. I can wear compressing stocks. What else we can do? For example, I can lose weight. If I did gain weight, I lose weight. Exercise more to increase the tone of my muscles, to push the blood up. All right, and so on. This is something that can reduce the how bad the varicose veins will be. Of course, there is treatments of varicose veins, so we can perform a phlebectomy. I can perform sclerotherapy, so I can inject this sticky liquid to collapse those veins, especially for the superficial veins. All right. Moving on to another homeostatic imbalance. This is my hypotension, and hypo means low, tension means pressure. So this is a low blood pressure. I do diagnose hypotension by having a systolic pressure below 100 millimeter mercury. This is often associated with long life and lack of cardiovascular illness. So the way I think about hypotension, so I'm getting old, I have weak muscles now. I have weak muscles. So if I have weak muscles, what happens to the amount of blood return that will be returning back to my heart? It will be reduced. So I'm losing this muscle tone, so I'm not pushing the blood back up to my heart. So what's going to happen to the amount of blood getting back to the heart? It will be reduced. And as a result, what's going to happen to the amount of blood pumped out of the heart? It will be reduced. So how does this come? So if I'm getting 5 liters, I will be pumping 5 liters out. If I'm getting 3 liters in, I will be pumping those 3 liters out, and so on. Alright, so the amount of blood that you're pumping is the same as the venous returning back to the heart. So if I have a reduced venous return, I have nothing to pump out. Alright, so why is it common with lacking cardiovascular problems? What is a common thing that might happen when we get older?
Shortness of breath.
So in terms of blood vessels.
Weakness.
Atherosclerosis.
Atherosclerosis. What's atherosclerosis?
Stiffening and plaque
I
buildup.
have, yes. So if I'm looking here at a blood vessel, over time, my blood vessels will become rough to the inside, and I will start to accumulate fat here in the wall of the blood vessel. And as a result, what's going to happen to my ability to expand as an artery?
Yeah.
It will be reduced. My vessels will become stiff. So the ability of the elastic vessels to expand will be reduced. And as a result, what's going to happen to the blood pressure? Remember what was the amount of pressure that you are applying by the left ventricle? When it contracts, it's around 300 millimeter mercury. And remember, why did I have 120 millimeter mercury?
Because it expanded.
Yeah, because the blood vessels will expand, and as you increase the volume, you reduce pressure. Right? This is what we've mentioned earlier today. Alright, so here, if I lose the ability to expand, what's going to happen to the blood pressure? So there will be no increase in volume or reduced increase in volume. So what's going to happen to my blood pressure? My blood pressure will go up. So normally, as a normal aging process, I will have an increase in my blood pressure. If I don't have a cardiovascular problem, my muscles are getting weaker, so what's going to happen to my blood pressure? Will go down. Because normally, both of them will be associated together. When I have atherosclerosis, I will be reducing the ability of the blood vessels to expand, so this will increase my blood pressure. At the same time, I have low venous return because I got weaker muscles now when I get old. So those will compensate each other. So I will have a relatively normal blood pressure as I get older. But if I don't have a cardiovascular problem, and I'm getting older, losing my muscle tone, so what's going to happen as a result?
Decreased blood pressure.
I will have a reduced blood pressure, hypotension. Again, how would you be able to diagnose hypotension? Having systolic blood pressure below 100 millimeter mercury. Alright? Moving on to another homeostatic imbalance that will be related here to the blood vessels. This would be hypertension. Hypertension is, hyper means increased, tension is pressure. So I will diagnose hypertension as an arterial pressure. This is this kind of question. It's very important to practice this kind of question. So if, for example, I did start from basilic vein, and I want to go to for example, the hepatic vein, common hepatic vein. So I'm starting here from the basilic vein, willing to go all the way to the common hepatic vein. How will I do this? Always think, what is my next station? So starting from basilic vein, remember that this is my right atrium, right ventricle, and those would be superior vena cava, brachiocephalic veins, internal, external jugular, and subclavian vein here. So we can start answering this. Here, this is my R. So basilic vein here will be draining the superficial surface of the medial aspect of your forearm. It will be getting the blood up to what vein?
Ulnar vein?
So B basilic we drain in
To the brachial vein.
brachial. Right? So the next station will be my brachial vein, draining the basilic vein. Then brachial will pass in the axillary region, it will become axillary vein. Axillary vein. Then axillary vein will pass below the clavicle. This would be my subclavian. What's my next station? The subclavian vein. Brachiocephalic vein. Brachiocephalic vein. Then brachiocephalic will pass down to be drained into my superior vena cava. And then from the superior vena cava I will be drained into right atrium, then to my right ventricle, to be pumped up from the right ventricle to reach my what vessel?
Lungs. Or well, the pulmonary trunk.
Pulmonary trunk. Remember, you're passing from right atrium to right ventricle. You are passing up to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries and pulmonary trunk. Then you will be draining the lungs back to left atrium to pass down into the left ventricle through what valve? Do you remember? Bicuspid or mitral valve. Then I will be pumped out of the left ventricle into through my aortic semilunar valve, passing the ascending aorta, aortic arch, then descending aorta. Descending aorta will carry the blood down, will pass the diaphragm. It will be called my abdominal aorta. And then from the abdominal aorta, I will be forming many branches. What I'm concerned with, what you need to ask yourself at this point, where am I going? When you get to the aorta, you have to remember where are you going? Which organ am I willing to supply to go to know which branch will you be taking? So here, you're going to common hepatic vein, so you can supply any abdominal organ except for kidneys. Can supply any abdominal organ. All the organs will drain in the liver. So you want to get the blood to liver. This is your destination. So I am in the abdominal aorta. Abdominal aorta, you can take any path. I will take the easiest one, which is going directly to the liver. So from the abdominal aorta, I will pass into the first branch. This is my celiac trunk. Celiac trunk. And from the celiac trunk, I will supply the liver through hepatic artery. Hepatic artery. And then from the liver, I will be drained into my common hepatic vein to get the blood down to my inferior vena cava. So this is my destination here, common hepatic vein. Alright, so you can have any other pathways that you choose. For example, if you're going to spleen, you can go through celiac trunk, splenic artery, then splenic vein, and then from the splenic vein you drain into the common, into the portal hepatic vein, to the liver, and then from the liver to the common hepatic vein. You can go to the stomach. I can pass celiac trunk, left gastric artery. From the left gastric artery I will supply the stomach wall, and then from the stomach I will be drained through gastric veins to portal hepatic vein, to the liver, and then to common hepatic vein. So you can choose any path that you want. Not a problem. Alright, any questions concerning the pathway?
We don't have to
How-
do like capillary beds and all that.
So you just mentioned the name of the organs that you will be supplying.
Okay.
You don't need
Make sure you
to,
mention
because
the
it's,
valves.
yeah, you need to mention the valves of the heart. You need to mention the chambers of the heart that you will be passing through. Yes. This is 2. Yeah, we're starting at 12. Any questions? Questions? Alright, so that's it for today. We'll see you next week.